Welcome to the podcast. It's been a little minute since we recorded one of these. Today I have Dr. Steven Spencer. He's actually a buddy of mine. We go out together. We're personal friends. And he's somebody who has the most off the wall and, kind of fucking insane views on health that I've ever seen. But he's just a gangster. And so this is something that will actually translate not just into your health, but also into other areas of your life, such as making more cash and having better social skills. He's gonna talk about things like magnetic resonance, things that are really, really, really off the wall. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask him, I'm gonna start off by asking him a little bit about, what are some of his ideas that are the most off the wall, but then we're gonna dial back, go a little bit into his personal story. And then finally, we're gonna be going through a bunch of different recommendations for you, just different ideas that you could apply immediately from his point of view. And I think if you test them out, you might get some pretty wild results. Steven, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Owen.
Of course, bro. Okay, so right off the bat, you're somebody who has very, very different views than anyone that I've ever seen regarding health, right? I mean, some of them would be, some of them could be like, within the range of standard, but some of them are very, very, very different. And what intrigued me about you is I've probably had 500 or 1,000 different natural health practitioners that I've worked with in my adult life, including chiropractors. And when I work with you, you're the best that I've ever worked with. And I mean that. I'm not just saying that because you're on camera. You're literally the best I've ever worked with. I tell that to everybody. You are so good, for example, at doing adjustments, like chiropractic adjustments, that it makes me question whether or not I should even go to a chiropractor. There's that much of a gap. It's weird to me. I don't understand why you're so much better at it than everybody else. And your mind is simply just like fired up with thousands and thousands of different distinctions about natural health. What I want to figure out is like, what is it that got you into this? What are the different paradigms that you had that made the idea of natural health different for you? And then what I'd also say is like, so much of what you teach, I think also helps somebody to be more magnetic and to have more personal energy, whether that's to focus on making money, whether that's to focus on having better social skills. I think you have that too. It almost feels like it increases your radius of energy is another thing that I've gotten from you.
100% it does, right?
Okay.
Right? And so the whole thing is about the healer, heal thyself, right? So I had this whole healing journey that I had to go on, right? It's through adversity that man finds his purpose. So I was diagnosed with MS. I had scoliosis. I had Lyme disease. And the deal was, I didn't want to take the drugs. I went that route and it didn't work, right? So I went to the chiropractor, the acupuncturist, the physical therapist. None of it worked. Helped, maybe some things helped, right? But even everybody else, they go to these doctors and they get inconsistent results. I wanted to figure out, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this and make it consistent? And how are we going to make it predictable? And that was my key fact that I wanted, right? And I knew I was going to get myself out of it. So I refused to have drugs and surgery. And
could I ask you another quick question too?
Yeah.
Having MS, that's a nerve issue,
It's a neurological condition, sure.
Yeah, was that really bad?
When I was driving in the car, I was coming home from a friend's house, and all of a sudden my vision went out. So I'm driving, couldn't see a thing, slowly pulled the car over, and then it slowly faded back in, right? And I knew something was wrong. That's when I went and got the MRIs and wanted to see what was really going on, right? I was just going through a stressful time in my life, right? I was going through a divorce, had an investor steal my money, so I lost everything, right? So it was like starting from ground zero. And I knew at that point I had to seek help, right? But in allopathic medicine, there's no cure.
And you also had Lyme, which is a nightmare.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah, it supposedly comes from a tick. Some people think that's a bioweapon.
Yeah.
And then basically just hijacks your entire health.
Yeah, it's a bacteria. It overruns the body and you can't get rid of it. But we're gonna go through how to solve these issues, right?
Okay.
And so the difference between what everyone else does and what I do is I understand that physics trumps biochemistry, right? Physics, like light drives biology. And that's kind of a starting point for the story, right? So when we look at how life was formed.
I want to mention this as we go into this. I want to be very, very clear that Steven is giving his personal opinions, which is for your entertainment purposes only. It's for entertainment purposes. If you have any kind of a health issue, go directly to a traditional doctor who may prescribe you things like antibiotics. Okay, so we are simply speaking from we're not giving any medical advice at all. It is for entertainment purposes only, and it is for just fun conversation, just hearing different opinions. None of this is medical advice. Go see your doctor for medical advice. Okay, continue.
Cool. So the deal is you have to understand how life happened, right? In Genesis 1, it says, let there be light. In that, you have to understand that light contains a magnetic field. Light is also electromagnetic frequency. So through light, life was formed. And it basically, those magnetic waves of that light took the planet and formed matter. Around that matter now became a magnetic field around that Earth, right? So now when the light passes through, we call that the photoelectric effect. Now the photoelectric effect then had to change light and it changed biology on this Earth. So originally we had prokaryotic cells, these single cellular organisms, and there was primarily hydrogen in the environment. Well, as time pressed on and the light waves changed, the photoelectric effect, next thing you know, we have eukaryotic life that opened the way for us to start using oxygen for fuel, right? Now we have these eukaryotes going on and we start to form, right? So the mitochondria in our cell is a electron, what do I want to say? It moves electrons through it, right? So in that case where light enters that and it moves electrons, it's changing the light that's emitted outside you. So light is a conductor of electricity that then forms these waves that through your thoughts are actually emitted outside your body. So your thoughts create a magnetic field, right? Just like the Earth has an ionosphere and a magnetic field, that light that's emitted from your proteins in your body, that are semiconductors, is actually forming the matter around you, right? So if you change the way you view the world you view changes. So your thoughts and beliefs are sculpting the biology outside of you as well. So can you see the reciprocal correlation there between our Earth and then also us and our thoughts?
Well,
right?
I can tell you this.
Yeah.
Like I have not been sick since 2012 at all. No common cold, nothing.
Yeah.
And I speculate that it could be different protocols that I'm doing, but if I was also guessing, it perhaps could be the different thoughts that are in my brain. I mean, it's speculative. Like I said, not giving medical advice for entertainment purposes only. But I mean, it is funny that like I never really get pissed off about anything, and I'm always very, very optimistic, and I laugh a lot. I'm kind of a goofball, so it's funny that like somehow, some way, everyone's just getting sick, and I just don't get sick. And then I've also kind of mastered pushing my energy out, like whether it's crowds or whether it's out socializing. So that's kind of like an art form for me. So it's just kind of funny how that kind of pans out. But I feel like that correlates somewhat to what you're saying.
Right. So it's E equals MC squared, right? So energy and mass are interchangeable. C squared is light. So basically, the light is sculpting your reality. It's a magnetic field. The light that's emitted outside you is a magnetic field, and the light waves are actually changing. They're undulating. They're going up and down. Undulating is kind of a funny word, right? Undulating sounds like it's like the equivalent of the word moist, right? But
by the way, before we go deeper, I want to talk about the results that you're looking to get, because I feel like we're going really deep into the theory. Yeah. But I think people are like, okay, well, like what am I listening to? Yeah. Like what's the result that you're seeking via this understanding?
So the results of all this, and I'm painting the picture here for everybody, right? So the deal is we understand that, right? But it's your thoughts and beliefs that are actually sculpting your reality. So disease in the mind through your thoughts is actually creating disease in your body. So that takes us back to the MS. It takes us back to the MS. It takes us back to the scoliosis. It takes us back to the Lyme disease, right? So disease in the mind becomes disease in the body. So there's these chronic conditions. So let's say you're 10 years old, right? And your parents go through a divorce. And now you see your mother going out and dating all these men. Now you could perceive it two different ways. Either she's dating a lot of men and women are whores, right? Or you could perceive it as, oh, all men are liars and cheaters, right? So life is about perception, right? Life is not about definitive answers, right? Oftentimes people perceive reality differently. So if let's say you believe that all women are whores, guess what kind of woman you're going to attract, right? Let's say that you believe that all men sleep around. Women, who do you think that you're going to attract, right? So you have to approach everything without judgment. And so disease in the mind, since it becomes disease in the body, if you change the thoughts and if you change the way that you view the world you view actually changes, because it's just a magnetic resonance that's outside of you that you're forming the reality, taking all the matter, comprising it in a certain fashion to teach you lessons, because truthfully, it's about the evolution of the soul. And disease has a lesson to teach you. It's like a gift in strange wrapping paper. Right? And it's happening for you to awaken, because we're just spiritual beings at the end of the day having this human experience.
Well, I do remember that when I would get sick when I was younger, it's like I would sit there and I felt like I was being attacked by negative thoughts actually when I was sick. Sometimes I'd even cry actually. I get sick and I'd be really sick for like 4 or 5 days. And I'd start like crying. I'm like, man, like my life's so fucked up. Like, oh, like what am I doing? And it almost felt like I was in this weird, like the way people would describe, I've never done it, but people describe like an ayahuasca trip where they're having like their life kind of flash in front of their eyes, and I would get sick and it would force me to kind of look at these certain things that are negative and like try to resolve them. And it felt kind of like a forced sit down. It's like, if you're not going to do self-care, well then motherfucker, you're going to sit the fuck down and you're going to do the fucking self-care. So it almost felt like what I took from that when I would get sick when I was younger was like, maybe I should do better self-care. Maybe I have to like release trauma more. I have to process more. And the other thing is that if I ever feel like something's coming on, like I might get sick, I actually just sit there and rest. And then I do the same kind of processing that I would have done if I was sick, but I just sit there and I rest, you know? So that's like another thing. I don't know if that's correlated to what you're saying or not.
Right, because your thoughts are actually, remember physics, it's affecting the flow of electrons, right? Oxygen has to convert to CO2 and water, right? If electrons don't move because the light and the magnetic field through your thought are disrupted or disoriented, and those electrons don't move, we get something called reductive stress, right? And that reductive stress leads to oxidative damage, and it's creating illness in your body. That's what's actually happening, right? The inflammation can be created just from lack of light or from the thoughts that you have. And so it's teaching a lesson, the gift in strange wrapping paper, right? It's all happening for your awakening. So there's never a reason to judge the situation or think that it's a prison sentence when you're sick. It's actually just a learning lesson. That's it. So
and what would you recommend somebody would focus on while they're sick as they're lying there?
Well, let's go through this. Like every virus deals with unworthiness. Every bacteria deals with guilt. Every parasite deals with fear, dread, and doom, right? And so you probably never heard anybody say this stuff, but this is the reality. Like every disease has a root emotion behind it, right? Sure, we can take antibiotics and feel better, right? We can take an herbal supplement and feel better, right? There's magnetic frequencies of those as well. But the reality is if you don't heal what's in the subconscious mind, the dildo of unintended consequences comes for you, right? You don't expect it to come, but it is fucking coming for you, right? And it's to teach you. It's love. It's actually the love language of the universe, right? It's teaching you to awaken to the great potential that's within you. And the funny thing is like, you know, it's not just your health, right? It's also the money that you create in your life. It's the business you create in your life, right? It's the relationships you create in your life. Everything's connected to that subconscious mind, which is 98% of your thought. It's your conscious mind is 2% of your thought. How much can you create with 2%, right? But at the same time, while it is 98% of your thought that creates reality, you have to take the action steps because the stuff that you teach, right? You're never going to get anywhere in business. Yeah, you can work on your subconscious mind, try to manifest everything, but if you don't work on your personal development skills, you don't work on your public speaking, you don't work on reading books, like by on ad copy, you're screwed, right? You have to develop the skill sets, right? What do you say? Sharpen the spear. It's 1,000 out of 10, 1,000 out of 10, repetitively, right? So it's incorporating all of it. But you know what? It's the charge in the subconscious mind. It's actually going to draw in the people and the experiences that get you to the development of things that you need and you want in life, right? It gets you to the egotistic things, the money, the love, the health. That's all egotistical stuff. But what happens when those people get there? They're miserable and they get sick. And you resist the flow of life, you die, right? So you can have all the money in the world, but you get sick because you're unhappy. You don't even know why, because you got to the destination you thought was going to make you well, but you didn't get well, right? You're not healthy, right? You got a bad relationship because you focused too much on the money. It was an ego thing. So the real deal is like, if you find the happiness first and you're the magnetic resonance and the magnetic charge, you love doing the work, right? You love the self-development. You're in love with the journey, right? And love is that frequency that actually drives those electrons through your body, and you're not resisting the flow, so life just flows through you. So I don't believe there's a limitation on how long you can live. I actually believe that how long you live is dependent upon the electron flow that's created through the thoughts in your mind, right? It's the resistance to the flow of life, right? And if you say, I'm only gonna live to 120, I'm only gonna live to 100, that's your perception, right? You're actually speaking that and thinking that into existence. And so the mind is the number one thing. Everyone wants to focus on the supplement to take. They want to focus on what blood work do I do. They want to focus on the herb, right? They want to focus on the nutrition, right? They have all these different lifestyle factors, right? Every doctor has their own little specialty. But the whole thing is like, you got to focus on the physics. How does the electron flow? What do you actually think about, right? There are no limitations. The limitations are only the ones that you set. It is your divinity, right? And your divinity is a set of limitations that you set through your perception, right? And that's what life is perception. And that's the charge that's going out, that's emitting the light out of your cells, right? The photoelectric effect.
Okay, so one of the things that I talk about is, so if you're watching this at home, Steven is my friend, and he's just one of the most interesting people I've ever met, and he's got incredible results. And he's not used to being on podcasts. So Steven's like, I feel like, I can relate to how you feel right now, where you just have so much information in your head.
Yeah.
You're like, I just want to know, where do we start, man? Right?
Yeah.
So you're just like,
you go thousands of different directions, right?
Yeah, like, ready to go, So I would say so I'm going to try to ask some questions to like drill down some of this information. So one of them would be, and some of these may be questions that are like knock out of the park questions, and some of them we could just jump over. So one question I have is like, a lot of time what we'll refer to in our kind of little subculture that we have, we'll call someone a derper. A derper is basically, a derper is basically just somebody who, as you're walking down the street, their typical traits would be like, they're in groupthink, they're in coping, not thriving, they're easily manipulated, they don't have a lot of their own thinking, they're probably at what you'd almost call like a low spiritual vibration to whatever extent. They tend to gossip, they tend to shit talk, looking for easy dopamine spikes by feeling they're better than other people. That's why there's a lot of haters out there, rather than actually getting their own results. You'll see things like, because they're in a cope, they'll tend to eat processed foods, they'll tend to have like a weed habit, an alcohol habit, whatever, other drugs. They vote in socialist parties a lot of the time because they just want to not have to work and stuff. So the thing is like, and they're probably not reading a lot. They probably, a big one for me is they don't even travel to nature, right? It's like they're just kind of in the city. They never go to nature because like the city is just kind of like this cope loop that they're in, as opposed to like, going to nature, just seeing a fucking museum or something, so they could actually expand their mind a little bit, maybe read a book. So within the framework that you're talking about, would you have any insight into like the derper, just from
Sure.
the
Oh,
frameworks that you're
100%, right? It's the internalized denied.
And then we will later go to a more evolved person as a contrast. Yeah, sorry.
So it's the internalized, denied, and disconnected emotions that they've put in their subconscious mind, right? And so, they are. It's like it's like spiritual warfare, right? Basically, they've internalized, denied, and disconnected from emotions because they don't know what to do and they don't know how to process them, right? And then that prevents the flow of electrons that leads to the chronic illness. And so the pain that they're creating in their life and the bad events, right? The poverty, the poor relationships they have, the health struggles they have, like they're creating those. It's to wake them out of that derp state, right? They have to have these things happen. Nobody does anything unless the gun is to their head, right? They have to go through that derp state, right? It's the awakening of the soul, right? There has to be evil in the world for you to appreciate love. There has to be cold in order for you to appreciate warmth, right? There has to be a narcissistic relationship at least once in your life so you can appreciate love, right? So cold, right? There has to be cold in order for you to appreciate warmth. All these different factors exist, and duality exists to awaken your soul, to awaken who you actually are.
Okay, I love that. And then, right, so there has to be the derper for the to be the awakened person. Well, how would you describe a more awakened person? What is that? What word would you use as what word? Would
I think
you
everybody
choose as
goes
the
through their own derp state, right? And so the awakened person is actually there. So like,
is that a word that you like to use? Awakened?
I do. I use that. Yeah.
Is there a word that you
enlightened
like to use?
and awakened, same terms, right? So, when it comes to, like, I think every person that's been enlightened or awakened, they went through a derp state. You went through your own.
For sure.
Right? I did. Look, I had to deal with MS, right? I had to deal with Lyme disease. I had to deal with scoliosis. Like, that was my awakening, right? And the funny thing is whenever I tried to deviate away from that and think, I want money, right? Every time I wanted to make more money, guess what happened? The universe is like, fuck you, right? Because it was like, this was my path to go through life. It was like a calling, right? Every time I left it, I left being broke. Somebody stole money from me. I had a bad relationship fall away. It was like every single time, it was like tower moment, right? You have to go through these things, right? To learn actually the self-development and learn actually who you are. So Viktor Frankl, right? He wrote the book, Man's Search for Meaning, right? It's through adversity that man finds his purpose. So it's like, the things that happen to you, like, why the fuck is this happening to me? I'm so sick of it, right? Become the things that you're like, thank God it did, right? Because now it gets to a point at which life is what's wonderful. It just flows through. You don't judge things, right? I really don't care what happens, right? I know that I'm creating it on some level, but it gives me another level of awakening or consciousness to come, right? So it's gratitude, right? It gives you gratitude. What gratitude is love in action. And it sounds corny, but like that's what the world needs is just more love, right? But as you become awakened, you create the environment where you awaken others, right? We all have this vibrational frequency within us, right? People are on different levels depending on their consciousness, whether you're a derper and what level derper you are, or whether you're completely awakened, right? Or you're enlightened, right? Everybody has this different vibrational frequency, but every person that has a higher level frequency is offsetting millions of people, right? And it gives them the opportunity to awaken. So,
By the way, that's I think I read that originally, and it might have been Fred Dawson or David R. Hawkins, but I remember they would say that
yes,
basically, some.
it was Hawkins' book. Yes.
Okay, so they would talk about how, one person that's vibrating at a very high level offsets all these people that are low level. Do you have any thoughts on where that theory comes from?
They actually use muscle testing to figure that out, but they test it on a scale of 0 to 1,000, right? So he correlates it to the average person is at a level of 200. What's actually interesting is dogs resonate at 400, right? So dogs are pretty much just happy most of the time, right? They really don't have much other emotion. They maybe be afraid if they're abused, but generally a dog's going to wag its tail, it's going to be relatively happy, and you're going to see most dogs resonate at 400, which is interesting that the average human being walking around is at like a 200, right? But they have that ability to level up where dogs pretty much stay at 400.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's such great potential in people.
So does somebody at a higher level, is there some kind of like energy emitting from them?
Oh,
or
light,
is it
right? It's
light
light.
emitting from them?
It's light. It's a magnetic field, right? And then that light and that magnetic field is actually what's forming the reality in the environment that you see all around you, right? And then as a together, we're creating this, like, it's agreement, right? We're all in agreement that plant is green, right? We're all in agreement of these things, so that's what we see.
Well, I mean, I could definitely say that when you're at a party with a bunch of like high vibe people, you tangibly come back feeling like it's kind of like a weird thing where you almost come back like it's like a healing. Like I think that's actually funny enough. Like sometimes people will come into some of the more positive environments that I'm part of, and if it's somebody who's not used to being there, they might be a little bit lower in the status hierarchy.
Yeah.
They're always thinking that there's like something to take. Like, well, maybe I'll get a piece of advice or some kind of connection. I think they don't realize, like, if they could just open up to like the vibration,
Just actually
or the
be
light,
themselves and be authentic and share who they were.
well, that 100%. But it's also for me in my journey, and I'm still on my journey certainly. When I would get around or currently get around people that are more high vibe, I don't have conversations with them where I'm trying to take anything. Like Ty Lopez is a guy who I think is just a really remarkable guy. And, whenever I'm around Ty Lopez, we'll go for dinner at Spago or something like that. Like, we don't talk business at all. We don't talk about girls much, right? We mostly just kind of joke around and tell random stories.
Yeah.
But I find that, like, just walking away from that, I will walk away, my mind almost feeling like I've hit another gear. It's almost like you take two sticks that are on fire, you kind of put them together, and then the flame goes like 4 times higher, whatever it goes.
Right.
And so it's like, I think people, they miss the point that when you're around a high vibration person, you don't necessarily need to drill them for a tip, right? Like even when I do infield trainings, like in my mind, I'm like, guys, we're trying to create an environment here with so much light in it that just being around it, you're going to crush it when we go out. And I will load you up with feedback. I'll give you more feedback than you can like ever imagine could even exist. I will give you more, I will demonstrate this, I will get you doing it, I'll go out with you and do it with you, I'll give you critiques, I'll do all that. And it's all freaking amazing, right? This is incredible. But it's the light in that environment, like just being in that environment, it switches something on in you that it would actually be very, very hard to achieve on your own. Eckhart Tolle talks about that. He would say, a great Zen teacher, just sitting there in the presence of a great Zen teacher is, can actually create an awakening just by osmosis, more or less.
Correct.
And so I think that, I actually was fortunate to have gone to many of Eckhart Tolle's live events and other teachers' live events, and I got a lot of value from that. I actually subjectively felt like I had that experience. Who knows, but that's how I felt. So the thing is, like, that's the experience I'm trying to create for other people. It's also a great technique socially, because just when you emit that kind of light and you go out to an environment, that's why I really believe that, like, sometimes like they'll have debates about should you use a lot of techniques with your social skills or should you be more natural. And I actually think that techniques are a very, very good tool if you don't have a lot of light. So you're not really like putting out any good vibes. But if you have a lot of light, then you don't really need a technique. You're like, yo, what up? Because you're just emanating with light, right? And so that's another thing. So I've seen a lot of this stuff in action. I've never really known fully what I think of it. It's sort of something that you can visibly see happening. It's
called constructive interference.
Okay, well,
it's a physics
I was going to say one last thing about it. Like, when you know what you're looking for, the effects are clear as day. Like, you can't not see this happening.
Right.
But it's very abstract. So when you talk about it with the average person, it just looks super woo and weird.
It's not.
But you cannot not see it when it's happening. But while I can clearly see this stuff happening, it's obvious, I've never thought that I have like a full-fledged understanding of it.
Yeah.
But I have a more general understanding of what I suspect is going on.
Let me explain something to you a little bit different too and go down this rabbit hole with you, right? So do you know who Dr. Moroso Emoto is? Okay, cool. So he basically would take water and he'd play music. And then he would take water and he would speak to it. and then you look underneath the dark field microscope, and what he discovered is it changes the actual shape of the water molecules, right? So if you play heavy metal death music, right, it looks muddy and dirty, right? If you play classical music, it's just beautiful, perfect crystal, right? But if you speak to it and say, fuck you, I hate you, right? It turns dirty and ugly and, it looks nasty, looks muddy. Well, if you tell it you love it, you appreciate it, thank you, right? It makes it this perfect crystal, and that creates cell potentiation. Your body's 85 to 90% water. It causes that energy just to flow through your body, and it creates cell potentiation. But that cell potentiation, that flow of energy through your body, is actually created through love. And the only reason that you can go out in public and want to give to others and then don't need anything is because there's an immense amount of love within you, right? You can authentically actually love people, right? If you have to take things from people, you can't love. If you need things, right? The whole goal of life is to seek nothing and attract everything. It's the exact things that you want is the exact resistance to why you're not getting it. So you have to pull back and think about, I don't even want anything. I don't need anything. I'm just going to go out there and be good. Self-development skills. Just fall in love with the journey of life. You fall in love with the journey of life, and you end up at the destination before you know it. And then when you get to the destination, you're not left with your dick in your hand, wondering, how do I get happy, right? You're not doing drugs. You're not going home alone, right? You meet lots of people. You got lots of people that care about you. You have this incredible life. You have lots of money. You're a multimillionaire, right? All these wonderful things come out of it, right? And you're healthy. You don't have to worry about your health. It just exists, and you don't get sick. Just like how you're not sick you never get sick because you're in such a high vibe state all the time because there's an immense amount of love within you that just wants to give to others because you know it's going to come back to you, right? It's effortless.
It's also a personal standard. I look at people who don't have that as, and not to be mean, because I understand everyone's on their journey, but being honest, I look at that and it's it looks very, very sad and weak and pathetic when you see someone in this very transactional, small little state. It looks like you're watching the Golem in Lord of the Rings. My precious, right? That was, I think that the Golem in Lord of the Rings was meant to represent what happens when you become disconnected from God and you do what's called idolatry. You turn a ring into God. The ring becomes God.
Right.
So when you see people that are just needing something from another person, it's such a pathetic look. Also, from years and years of me working on my dating life, I might go talk to a couple and the guy's very needy for that girl. And if I just don't care, she would immediately become repulsed by him, repulsed by her own boyfriend, and then wind up talking to me just because I'm emitting energy and not trying to take.
Right.
So it actually was something that became very, very obvious just in social skills as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, look, you have to look at life in this way of, let's go biblical, right? It's easier to thread a camel through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get into heaven, right? So when you only focus on the money, they'll be rich for a while, but I promise you there's karmic consequences to it, right? There just is. They need, they want. Their identity is in that, and it will kill them early, right? How many people do you know that you've worked with that are all in that hustle culture about money and ego, right? They keep buying things. It's materialism, right? They've been programmed by society to need. There's a time and a reckoning coming that's going to teach them a lesson. It's not this permanent thing for them, right? It's not easy for them. That's just, again, resist the flow of life and try to force things. What did the Buddha say? The Buddha said, what was the thing they said? The Buddha said, I'm trying to recall it now. What did the Buddha say? The Buddha said,
what's it about? What's the subject?
It's going to come to me. Oh, control. The Buddha said that control is a form of bondage, right? And bondage leads to suffering, right? So you're trying to control everything around you and there's no reason to control it. It's just the resistance to love, right? There's something that you're trying to force. So again, it goes back to that flow of electrons, resist the flow of life and you die, right? And that's ultimately what we need to do, right? Just let it go. Instead of focusing on the thing, what you really need to focus on is not what you want, but just being and learning the lesson. Just staying present and learning the lesson. Like Eckhart Tolle, just the power now. Just be present. What the universe is showing you is the thing that you need to heal. Change your beliefs, change your thoughts. The problem goes away. But if you have a charge, that's the resistance. And it's teaching you. Everything's a lesson in life.
Where do you speculate that we go after we die?
That's interesting, right?
Speculative.
Anybody? Okay, yeah, it's speculative, right? Because anybody says they know.
I know.
Right.
Santa told me.
Yeah, no. So I truly believe in reincarnation, and actually in my phone I've saved different biblical quotes that I believe reinforces that, right? But I 100% believe in reincarnation, right? It's the refinement of the soul, right? You don't get it right this lifetime, you're going to have to go through it again, because in physics, energy is not created nor destroyed, right? And we're just these big balls of energy of magnetic field, right? This is mass that's formed together from magnetic fields, light waves that are undulating, right? It's basically amplitude and wavelength of light is all that it is. So I truly believe that since energy can't be created or destroyed, you will reincarnate. Now, do you become a tree? Do you become a squirrel? Right? Actually, it's a funny story. There's a psychic that one of my friends down in Florida likes, right? And the psychic told her that Donald Trump was a squirrel in a previous life. But yeah, who knows? He was a successful squirrel. But
I can believe it.
He was a squirrel. So, but do I believe that we become other animals? I don't. Everything's interconnected. Right? I mean, everything is, you always hear in the spiritual community, everything's all one, right? It really, truly is. It's all just a formation of light. From Genesis 1, let there be light.
Do you think there's other planets that have intelligent life?
I 100% do. Yeah. Do you?
I do.
Yeah, I 100% do.
Do you, but I don't know, but I think so.
You want to get into alien talk?
Sure.
Do you? So, they talk about it, right? They, in the Bible, they refer them to as angels, but those are the aliens, right? So that's the Elohim, right? So the Bible talks about the Elohim. It talks about the Nephilim, right? The big giants that walked around. So yeah, those people were cross hybrids of humans and aliens. So yeah, 100%, right? 100%. It talks about them. It's just this. You have to realize, like, the Bible is oftentimes metaphorical, and people have different terms for different things.
Yeah.
Right. And like in medical, they talk about aerobic respiration. It's also oxidative phosphorylation. It's really just kind of the same thing. Yeah.
Do you think that who do you think created all this?
Obviously, there's one creator, right? And it started with the Big Bang, which is the light. It's called the zinc spark is actually creation, and actually, the zinc spark is actually when the exact moment that the soul enters into the zygote. So the same light burst, the zinc spark, is the same thing that happens when a soul is entered into, or when a baby's being born, or manifested into the mother's womb.
Do you want to have kids?
We've talked about that. It's a good possibility, right? Yeah, it's a good possibility.
You want to create the Big Bang?
Yeah, the Big Bang.
That's like a great nut, bro. Create the Big Bang when you come.
Right. That's a good possibility, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
How would you describe a life well lived by somebody who is more self-developed, has more light, and is their soul's ascending?
Not attachment to anything, right? You're always just now, right?
Yeah.
You know what you're supposed to do. It doesn't mean you don't do anything, right? The power now is about staying present. You know what to do. Like when I pick out a book to read, or when I want to work with a mentor. I feel, is this what I'm supposed to do? Like you feel like, it's like, they call it intuition, right? The third eye, whatever, right? But it's like, you make decisions based upon, is this right for me? Whether it be good or bad, you don't care because it's teaching you something. But you just do it. You just do it. You just do it over and over and over, and you always end up at the destination. You don't have to worry about it, right? I get it. When you have Lyme disease, right? When you have scoliosis, when you have MS, you just like, life is over. Like, I'm never gonna get out of this, right? And it's like really hard to flip your mindset when you're going through it. But if you make the right action based upon this is right, this is right, this is right, and once you get to the destination, like, these are things that people don't heal from, right? These are life sentence things for people, right? They walk around all fucked up, dragging their leg behind them like I did, right? They have MS, so they end up in a wheelchair, right? They have Lyme disease, they can't think straight, they're foggy headed. I went through all that, right? But what was the question you said? It was
The more optimal way of living.
More optimal way of living.
Yeah,
So
a more developed person.
A more developed person. So a more developed person, it just becomes easier for them, right? The road does get easier, right? It's very difficult in the beginning, right? It's extremely difficult. So it's about just changing the way that you view the world and just allowing it to unfold. Just do what's right in the moment, what feels right, right? Even if it goes wrong, we're still right, right? It's directing a different path because let's just say that you're depressed and you're sad, right? You're sitting at home all alone. I don't feel like going out. I don't feel like doing anything. And your friend calls you and says, hey, let's go out. No, I don't feel like it. I don't feel good. I'm sick. I'm kind of sad. I'm depressed. I just want to stay at home alone. How do you know that that person that calls you, said, let's go out, is going to introduce you to somebody that's going to get you out of your situation, right? They're like this little angel that was put in your life to bring you to that destination. But yet you rejected it because you were too stuck on yourself and too sad about your situation. And like this gift came into your life. You're like, fuck you, God, right? Fuck you, I'm not going, right? I suck, right? That's basically what you're saying, right? So you're not staying present in the moment. What you're doing is disconnecting, right? And that's when you die. That's the death of the soul, and that's when you reach the derp status.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And some people never come out of it.
It's sad. It's crazy, man.
You know what I mean? But here's the thing is
insane.
you as a light being and with all this energy and good vibes, like just you showing up in presence, and you see this in the seminars, it makes something in their eye just change.
It does, yeah.
Right? And then all of a sudden they make the action steps. Just your presence. It's not even what you said. It's just your presence.
Yeah, and it's funny because like I remember being in a derp state for so long, and I think I've always had my pockets of it and stuff, but I'm largely 80-90% out of it. I think there's always little pockets. But I see how most people operate, and it's actually very unreal to me. It's very surreal or unreal, the amount of how spaced out pretty much everybody is.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking they're joking. It's also when people have hatred in them. I don't feel any hatred towards anybody. So I'll see people that have hatred. I'm like, they're kidding. They don't have hatred. Like, who has hatred? And then you realize, like a lot of people are like fucking salty, man. You're like, damn, bro. Like, you're carrying some pain.
Yeah.
And it's not even real to me. Like, it's just not even possible. Like, I can't even imagine what it's like to just hate somebody, and and to be spaced out, and to not want to build your wealth or to go travel or to go. To be honest, I have like a great sex life. I've been having sex the last several hours, and it's just insane. And I'm just like, how do you not have that?
Yeah.
Right? So it's like with one of the most beautiful women I've ever laid eyes on. And it's just like, how do you not go do that? Like, why do you not do that?
Well, the funny thing isn't it interesting?
You just sit there like this is just okay,
right?
Like you don't want to fight, man. Like rise up, but they don't do it, and it's not real to me. But for whatever reason, it
reinforces their belief system.
It's just most of what's out there. It's crazy.
Right, it reinforces their belief system, right? That's what's going on, right? Their whole belief system is, I'm not valuable. Women don't like me. I'm not good looking enough. I'm not 6 feet tall. I don't have 6 figures. Right, I'm not 6 inches.
Yeah.
It's hopeless. Why bother? Right? Yeah, the universe is showing you that. But how many 5'3" guys do you know that work with you and they kill it?
Well, yeah, because they actually approach. They actually.
Well, they actually believe in
take
themselves,
action.
right?
Yeah, they believe in themselves too.
Yeah.
Often more than taller guys do. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, it's the other end of the spectrum, right? A guy that's got it all together.
Correct.
Right, and just can't.
Correct.
Seem to pull it.
100%.
Right.
Yeah, but it's weird to me that that's the majority of what's out there. Because you'll be in a seminar room and you're like, the world is awakening.
Look, when the student's ready, the master appears. That's how it works, right? They're people that are ready to make the change, right? They're ready. So it's a whole different, you kind of get in this convoluted state where you're like, oh, it's really getting well, and then you go out in the world and you're like,
I know. You're like, this is not real.
I want to go back home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you're like, I just want to go back home, but at the same time, when you're out there, you have to realize the impact that you can make, and just say, it's not so bad. You know what I mean? It's chaos. And actually, if you focus on the negativity too much, you're actually feeding it, right? And so the last thing you want to do is feed the negativity, feed the oppressive governments, feed the homeless, right? You know what I mean? I'm not saying feed them indirectly. Somebody asks you and they're hungry, feed them. But I'm saying don't give them the negativity, right? Give them a path, right? It's give a man a fish, he eats for a day, right? Teach him how to fish, he eats for life. That's the whole lesson. Awaken people, give them the path if they're ready. And sometimes it's actually a gift to let people suffer a little bit. It's like tough love, right? You gotta just let them suffer just a little bit, right? Don't let them harm themselves too much, but let them feel the pain. That little bit of pain they feel is the motivating factor, right? The gun's just starting to get to their head before they pull the trigger, and they're like, wait, I'm not gonna do this. There might be a way out, right? Somebody shows up and for you, it might be just give them a little glimpse of what they can have, right? You know, show them how easy it is to live life, right? How easy it is to pick up women, right? How easy it is to make money, right? How you've never been sick in your life, right?
No, many years, yes.
Right, and so like that's my story, right? All the different things that I went through. It's like you don't have to deal with this if you don't want, or if you want to, that's your choice. Like this is all on you. Like I'm kind of showing you the way. I've kind of already lived it, right? You need a mentor that's kind of lived it, not some guy who just went to school and learned some theories. And sometimes they work, but a lot of times they don't. So what do you do, right? I've actually gone through the pit, right, and had to figure out how to do it. Things that people don't come back from. So, you know, that's like, you know, that's the gratitude I have, right? And that's just the awakening. That's the gratitude is just that love in action, right? It moves those flow of electrons. It basically forms those wavelengths and the amplitude of light that's emitted outside of you, because all proteins are semiconductors, right? There's semiconductors for light, so it's forming that, and then it's like, okay, the universe is showing me that. So sometimes you just got to go meditate, right? You like to go in nature. So your thing is, let's just go outside. Let's go hike, right? Let's go barefoot for a while, right? You're picking up electrons from the earth, right? You go out in the wilderness. The trees are actually increasing the infrared light. Infrared light moves electrons through your mitochondria, so you make more CO2. And what does more CO2 do? It stops gene expression. It relaxes your DNA, right? It unwinds your DNA. So you can actually stop gene expression through light and beliefs. Right? Did you read Biology of Belief? Right? So in Biology of Belief, Bruce Lipton talks about the gene expression, right? So genes are the gun, but environment pulls the trigger. And I look at DNA, right? I actually use it. Right? It's a valuable tool. It tells me what diseases are possible. It tells me what antioxidants they can't make well. And say, oh, we might need to support you in this area, right? But it's, you know, the blood work I do, the DNA I look at, like it's all painting a picture what's happening that helps me figure out what's happening with them on a subconscious level. And then we change those thoughts and views. It opens up the electron flow. Chronic illness starts to change, right? The electrons start to move. Their life starts to change. It's actually interesting because it is really about the flow of energy, because when I adjust someone, because I'm do it differently than everybody else, completely different, right? I'm pulling apart adhesions on the spinal cord. And when I pull those adhesions apart on the spinal cord, it slackens it. And I move bones in the opposite direction. I don't do P to A and push down on people and flatten their spine. I move A to P. I move it differently, and the body pops up, and it's permanent change on the very first visit, actually. But when I do that, it changes the flow of energy through their body, because when you stretch nerves, they lose function. That was from Alfred Brigg. He was a neurosurgeon from Europe. And so he was cutting the spinal cord, elongating the cord, and people's cord would relax, and he'd go, oh, it's physics. When a nerve is stretched, it loses function. I cut the cord, and all of a sudden, electrons start to move. So it's like the TV's plugged back in. What's interesting is it changes that flow of electrons. It's in spirituality, they call it the Kundalini, right? It's the lymphatic system. It's a pituitary pump. It's pumping that cerebral spinal fluid. But what's interesting is you just change people's spine and the way the energy flows, and immediately their life starts to change. I didn't talk about them anything spiritually. I didn't change any of their belief systems, but because they feel better, you took off one thing off their mind. And their life starts to shift and change, because they don't have to worry about my hip hurts, my back hurts, my neck hurts, right? They're not concerned about that little problem anymore. So it gives them the capacity to expand outward and see the possibilities of what else could be. Yeah.
I love it, bro. What would you say some great final remarks that you'd like to leave in? You know, I feel like we're deep into it, and I want to make sure, because like I feel like what you talk about next, like there's like a lot of really good stuff to get into, but if we get into it like, you know, too deep in the broadcast, people will miss it. So I think there's a lot of like how-to stuff, and we'll probably do another broadcast together.
Yeah, we can go through. I'm gonna go.
But what I'd say is this: like, why don't we take, you know, maybe 15 minutes or so to like just cover any like kind of final thoughts based on what we have covered, and then I'd like to have you back, and we could do maybe even this week, and we could do another one on like how-to and like actual action steps.
Yeah, we could actually do that. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay, but tell me a little bit about maybe some final thoughts you have on this.
You know, let's leave it with this. If you love the world with all your heart, it'll love you back. But it all starts within you. And that's what I would tell people. Like, seriously, love the world with all your heart. Let it love you back, right? Emit that light, let it come back, And don't judge the people that come at you, right? They're coming in your life for a reason. Like, you might be meant to change their life. They may not take you up on it, right? But at the same time, that person might be coming into your life, and those bad things happen to teach you a lesson. So don't judge it. Just be with what it is. So just love the world with all your heart. And as you love the world with all your heart, it loves you back. But it always starts with you.
Beautiful, bro. Thank you, man. Thank you for coming on, man.
Thanks.
Sick. Good. We'll be back. We will be back. Peace.